Welcome, and thank you for joining us today for the Florida Vocational Rehabilitation Community of Practice on Self-Employment. My name is Peter Shepis, and I will be your host and one of the presenters. We have with us Jan Pearce from the Employment Programs Unit at Florida VR headquarters, and we will share with you our self-employment program and some of our success stories. Vocational rehabilitation, also known as VR, is a federal state program that helps people who have physical or mental disabilities prepare for, obtain, or keep a job. VR is committed to helping people with disabilities find meaningful careers. Our mission is to help individuals with disabilities find, maintain, and advance in employment and enhance their independence. Our vision is to become the first place individuals with disabilities turn to when seeking employment and a top resource for employers in need of qualified employees. Like I said earlier, my name is Peter Shepis, and I am one of the employment program administrators for the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation in Florida. And I've been with the agency since 2015. I oversee the self-employment program as well as other adult programs. I have a master's in clinical rehabilitation and mental health counseling from West Virginia University, and I'm a certified rehabilitation counselor, better known as a CRC, and also a community work incentive counselor, also known as a CWIC. Now I will pass it over to Jan.
Thanks, Peter. Hello, everybody. I'm not sure whether you'll be viewing this in the morning or afternoon, so I'm just going to wish you a good day. As Peter mentioned, I'm Jan Pearce. I am the Supported Employment Administrator for Florida VR. I was also very involved in the expansion of self-employment within our system, and we're going to talk more about that later. A little bit about my background. I've worked for 43 years, so I'm just giving away my age now. I am a senior, but I've worked for 43 years in this field, primarily developing supports and services for those individuals with the most significant or complex disability. That's been my passion. So, Peter?
Okay, let's go over what you'll learn about today. After this session, you'll be able to identify additional Florida VR programs and services to assist self-employment customers. Explain how the Florida VR Certified Business and Technical Assistance Program supports VR customers interested in self-employment. Define the self-employment benchmark structure and describe Florida VR self-employment customer success stories. Self-employment was recognized as an employment outcome under the Rehabilitation Act amendments of 1998, contained in Title IV of the Workforce Investment Act, WIA, and is specified as a vocational service to be provided under the Act. The State Vocational Rehabilitation VR Service Program can provide services necessary to reach self-employment outcomes. Self-employment, the definition of this term varies, but for IRS purposes, it means someone who carries on a trade or a business as a sole proprietorship or partnership, in some cases an LLC, and pays self-employment tax. The IRS generally does not consider people who form corporations or some LLCs to be self-employed. Individuals who form corporations are typically paid as an employee of the corporation and do not pay self-employment tax. Florida VR states in our policy, self-employment and supported self-employment with a viable business plan are considered acceptable employment outcomes. This option must be consistent with an individual's strengths, resources, priorities, concerns, abilities, capabilities, interests, and of course, informed choice. The individual must directly contribute to the operation of the business or services, development of the product, perform a core function of the business, VR provides services to support this outcome. The services are described in the IPE as necessary to assist an individual to prepare for, secure, retain, or regain an employment outcome. Many of you might be familiar with the Career Index website. I prefer using the Career Index Plus version. It gives you a personalized search function. On the Career Index Plus, if you type in self-employment, a variety of different careers come up, from writers and authors, real estate agents, lawyers, groundkeepers, hairdressers, just to name a few. And that shows that not every career has to be wage employment and still is an acceptable employment outcome. Now I will pass it over to Jan to give a brief history on the Florida VR self-employment program.
VR has a long-standing history of self-employment services. They really started 2005. It was kind of official, and there was a goal set to increase self-employment outcomes and opportunities for people. 2010, we really revamped our whole program, and we developed the, as Peter's mentioned, the Certified Business Technical Assistant Consultants. And I did not name that. A former director chose that title. So we talk about it as CBTACs for short. And we continue to kind of evolve our program to where we're up to now, where we do have some formalized guides and assistance. But during that 17 years history that VR was providing self-employment, I think it's really noteworthy that while VR was offering those services in 2005 and even before, what we were doing typically was providing pieces of equipment or supplies. We weren't providing real technical assistance. We didn't have a lot of support around people. Counselors really looked at it as approving items that people needed for their business, and we kind of left the customers to figure out all the rest themselves, with some guidance and counseling, but there really wasn't a structure. So we realized that just offering the service was not sufficient to meet the needs of our customers or our counselors who were trying to assist but may not have had the business background to understand financial statements, profit and loss. I mean, there's so much into a business plan. And so we realized we needed to do something else because a lot of the cases were failing. They either didn't even get to launch or they weren't being successful. So that's why that change in 2010, we really revamped everything. These specially trained vendors, and Peter will talk a little bit more about them later, the CBTACs, can provide supports and services from day one when a customer comes into a VR office and says, I have an idea, I'd like to start a business. I've always thought that would be something I'd be interested in, until the conclusion of the case. So, we can have CBTACs in there helping beginning to end of the case. And then for a little while after the case, they can help with launching that business. And we'll talk about that as well, because we'll talk a little bit more further about that. So, Peter mentioned the definition of self-employment that the IRS looks at. VR, when we typically talk about it, we talk about looking at someone who's working for oneself and has direct control over the work, the prices, the products or services. Doesn't mean they have to do it all, but they have to be in control. And it can be carried out through different proprietorships, partnerships, different types of corporations. All that would be decided in the business plan as to what makes sense. Self-employment, doesn't include, some passive investing or in businesses operated by others and not-for-profit organizations or franchise businesses. And people often wonder why, and it's because you're really not the owner. The franchise is the owner. And nonprofits have boards, so you're not the sole owner. So those are some things Peter will talk again about later. But hopefully you're aware that VR's really services are all designed, to prepare for, secure, retain, regain, all those things based on an applicant's, unique strengths, interests, capacities, and their goals. And in all of our cases, we want people to achieve economic self-sufficiency. And self-employment is just one wonderful way that people can select that career pathway. So we're so pleased to have a strong program to offer people. And I'm going to go on and talk about supported self-employment. We have a fairly strong supported self-employment program. We're still working on it. And really what we're talking about is supported self-employment, provides that opportunity for individuals with most significant disabilities to own a business, knowing that they're going to need some appropriate resources and supports. A key factor in the supported self-employment model is there is a requirement, just like in supported employment, that there be extended services and supports, long-term supports after the VR case is closed. Ours is time limited. So again, it's similar to supported employment in that VR pays for the initial intense supports, and other funding sources must be identified for the long-term support. It can be natural supports, it can be family, it can be other state agencies, but somebody else has to pick up. Because the last thing we want to do is set people up to fail. And supported self-employment for many years, individuals with most significant disabilities were kind of unintentionally and maybe intentionally sometimes excluded from this opportunity due to the lack of vision and knowledge and ability to understand all the resources that could be brought in. So there was a real lack of vision of the possibilities. So counselors, families, maybe the individual themselves didn't see that that might be a good fit for them. It is now one of the customized services that is offered through VR. We try and provide additional supports up front with using a team approach and having everybody work together. The counselor, the customer, the CBTAC, family, friends, people that are going to be involved and can help that customer on their way to success. So we're really proud of supported self-employment, and we hope to see those cases increase. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Peter, to talk about the benefits.
Thanks, Jan. There are many benefits to self-employment for individuals with disabilities that include having a varied or flexible work schedule to take care of their health needs, a way to customize their own employment that may not be available in the community, creating a work environment that's conducive to the nature of their disability, an opportunity to work from home when possible, having the autonomy to be their own boss, and in some cases have higher income versus wage employment. Now, I found this very interesting on Indeed.com. They list the 11 benefits of self-employment. Even with its own set of unique challenges, self-employment offers many advantages. And here are the 11 of the best benefits that come to being self-employed. 1, you're in control. 2, you're more passionate about what you do. 3, you make your own work schedule. 4, you choose your own coworkers. 5, you have creative control. 6, you determine your own work environment. 7, you can grow your skill set and knowledge base. 8, you can choose what you outsource to others. 9, you get the potential financial rewards. 10, you're enable variety of in your routine. And the 11th benefit they mention is you can build a meaningful network. So we talked about the CBTACs, our Certified Business Technical Assistant Consultants that we created here in Florida to help our self-employment program. So the CBTAC program was developed to provide support to counselors and individuals with disabilities interested in pursuing self-employment or supported self-employment as an employment outcome. CBTACs must meet VR qualifications to be a vendor. They assist individuals through the business development process and are available throughout Florida. So there are, we're going to talk about the benchmark structure for self-employment. So when working with a CBTAC, there are 7 benchmarks for self-employment. It's not required for all customers to start at the beginning, but it's recommended at least to start with benchmark 3 to determine the feasibility of the business. The first benchmark is the initial exploration. The purpose of the initial self-employment exploration is to determine whether self-employment or supported self-employment appears viable for consideration. These meetings are valuable source of information for considering self-employment. Therefore, they should be considered in lieu of a referral for a vocational evaluation. Counselors rely on CBTACs to spend enough time with the individual or the member of his or her business team to decide if self-employment seems to be a reasonable goal. The second benchmark is the business concept development. The purpose of this benchmark is to get to know the individual well enough to identify possible business concepts. Individuals come from a wide variety of backgrounds and experiences. The starting point for identifying business concepts can vary. For example, some individuals, they may start the process with a clear idea of a business, and others, they have the qualifications to provide the service, but need help in developing a business plan. Other individuals may indicate interest in self-employment, but have no concrete business idea and need guidance in developing a business concept. So now I'm going to pass it back over to Jan.
Okay, so when we do these presentations, there are a lot of frequently asked questions that arise. So we wanted to have the chance for Peter and I to discuss some of those with you that you may be thinking about. And so I'm going to start, Peter, and I'll ask you, is there a limit to the amount of money that VR will invest in assisting a customer to start up his business?
At the moment, there is no limit on the costs associated with the startup of a business. However, business plans should be thoroughly identified. All itemized costs and materials needed must be approved by the VR counselor.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I think it's important for people to know that there has to be great justification for all the costs and what they're asking VR for. And, we do look at that very closely because we have to be stewards of the state money. So another question that we get a lot from people are there things that VR cannot support when someone's wanting to open a business?
Yeah, that's always a number one question. And businesses, things that we can't support are businesses that are speculative in nature. Businesses organized as a hobby, activities engaged in not-for-profit, construction or purchase of real estate, refinancing of existing debt, paying salaries, purchase of vehicles, businesses that may violate community morality or are unlawful, business license renewals on a continuing basis, not-for-profit corporations, franchises, an expansion of an existing business, also ongoing support of a business, and paying taxes.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of items, but then if we list everything that VR can provide, there's many more things we can do to assist, but there are some of those rules that we do have to follow. So I'm going to turn it back over so we can continue moving through the self-employment benchmarks.
Thanks, Jan. So the third benchmark is the market research and benefit analysis. The purpose of the market research and benefit analysis is to research and assess the viability of all identified business concepts to determine if the individual has any benefits that need to be protected. The CBTAC, the individual, and/or the business team members conducted comprehensive market research to assess the viability of each business concept and determine the final business concept by answering two fundamental questions. Is the business concept financially viable? And does the concept fit the individual? That's very important. The fourth benchmark is the marketing and business financials. After market research has led to the identification of the business concept, CBTACs, individuals and members of the business team can prepare for the information for the business plan. CBTACs are expected to support the individual through comprehensive exploration of two key areas, and that's the business financials and marketing plans. Now I'll pass it back over to Jan.
Thanks, Peter. I would make one comment about the marketing and business financial. Those are just so critical for the customer's sake and for VRs. We don't want to invest in something. Okay, thank you, Peter. I do want to add how important those are. We have seen individuals come into VR that have really grand plans for a business, and then the CBTAC sits down with them and goes over all the costs and how much money they would potentially make. You know, often it's very easy to see this business is not going to make it as presented. And so, you know, we really want to catch things and make sure that we're not moving on and setting people up for failure, that these items are really looked at closely. So we're going to discuss a few more frequently asked questions that we get. So Peter, can we assist an individual with an existing business to expand it?
Unfortunately, we cannot assist with the expansion of an existing business. In the event that the client is unable to perform the duties of the business as a result of an injury or other medical conditions, modifications to an existing business may be permitted.
Thank you. I mean, that is important because there are times when we do go in and help. That, you know, that is possible depending on those reasons that Peter gave. Does every customer, and I think you covered it, but just to be clear, does every customer interested in self-employment have to use the services of a CBTAC?
No, certified business technical assistant consultants are not required, but are usually recommended to work with the customer throughout the case. The CBTACs were developed to provide support to the counselors and the individuals with disabilities interested in pursuing self-employment or supporting self-employment as an employment outcome. Great questions. Shall we move on to the final set of benchmarks?
That'd be great.
Okay, so the fifth benchmark is the business plan development. In this benchmark, CBTACs, individuals, and other business team members develop the operation and management plans to finalize all details related to the business structure. The sixth benchmark is the completed business plan. The completed business plan is a culmination of lengthy and detailed process. The plan includes all the information that has previously been submitted and reviewed. Each of the previous reports is a building block used to complete the plan. The final plan may include minor revisions, but should match the reports approved in previous benchmarks. VR does not require a specific format for the business plan, but it's best to keep the business plan simple and straightforward. The goal will describe exactly what the business will do, how it will be done, who will be involved, why it will succeed, the anticipated outcomes. In short, CBTACs, individuals, and other business team members use the business plan to summarize what was learned while completing the benchmark, including the overview of the company, description of the products and services, summary of the market research feasibility studies, identification of target markets, overview of the competition, identification of their competitive edge, outline on the marketing, management, and operations plan, summary of the benefits analysis, if it's applicable, details of financial plans, at least 3 years of projections, incorporating any relevant SSA benefits, list of all funding requested from VR and other funding sources, a list of case closure recommendations, and last but not least, projected implementation hours. So the business plan demonstrates that the business concept was thoroughly researched and fully assessed for viability. Strong plans are concise, clear, and provide comprehensive information. The next step is for the approval of funding of the business plan. The counselor, the CBTAC, and the individual should meet and discuss the plan and the projections. The counselor should provide updates to the supervisor and their area director if the plan is going to be a high cost plan. The CBTACs and the individual may be invited by the counselor to present the business plan to the supervisor and the area director, especially if a prior approval is going to be required. So the final benchmark is the implementation hours for the business launch. And the implementation hours allow the CBTAC to provide necessary assistance and support to individuals after the business has been accepted and approved. This benchmark assures that individuals can access assistance during the critical periods between acceptance of the business plan and launch of the business. An implementation plan should be submitted as part of the business plan. CBTACs can use implementation hours to provide support or assistance to individuals on virtually any aspect of getting the business up and going. So such as ordering inventory, meeting with customers, tracking sales, or pretty much any other areas that they're needed.
Wow, that's a lot of information to take in. So hopefully copies of the presentation will be available for you to look back on. But I have a few more questions, Peter, that I hear when we do these presentations and questions that get sent in to us by email.
Sure, Jan, ask away.
Yeah. So if a customer doesn't need a CBTAC, you know, are there other things we could help fund that would help them, like a class at the community college or a program at the Small Business Development Center? What else can we do?
Yes, external options are available to assist in starting a business. If it's determined the client needs additional training, example like college to start a business, then supports may be available. Please note this is a decision is on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you. So again, just because people kind of get hung up on this, so does everyone have to start at the beginning of the process if they're using a CBTAC?
No, self-employment cases could begin at any benchmark based upon experience of the client. It's highly recommended clients start with benchmark 3 to complete the feasibility of the business. but they can, start at any benchmark.
So we sometimes have this occur, and we hope it doesn't happen often, but sometimes we have a CBTAC that's recommending at the end of one of the benchmarks that we've discussed, wanting to move on. And they've had a meeting with the counselor and they talk about where they're at, and the counselor has to approve the next benchmark. They don't just automatically get to go through them all. So what if, the CBTAC is recommending that the case proceed on to the next benchmark, but the counselor doesn't feel it's working or that it's the right thing to do? How do we resolve that?
Yeah, that's a great question. The counselor has the ultimate decision on whether the case should move forward or if additional information is required to proceed with the case. If the decision is made not to move forward, then the counselor and the customer should have a conversation about what other options they wish to pursue. But these are excellent questions. So, Jan, I'm going to pass it back to you and talk a little bit about the additional VR services that can assist a self-employment case.
Thank you. VR offers a lot of services. I mean, there is a huge menu of services that you can receive from VR. And some of those services would pair nicely with an individual that was working on a self-employment case. We can help with technology, for example, which is often a highly requested service to help someone with their new business. We're letting youth know earlier in the process, making them aware of self-employment. And nationwide, self-employment endeavors have really gone up, and youth have certainly embraced it. Young adults who want to work from home, who want the freedom, who have areas that they're very interested in. So we try and make sure that our youth know those are options as well. And there's just sometimes we have somebody that's come to us, thinks maybe about self-employment, but isn't sure. So if they're thinking about, developing like a healthcare company, then we might help them get a job working in that field to see if it really is what they like and do they feel they can handle it. It's not required to do it that way, but we do have people ask us for some of our employment services as they're thinking about that self-employment future. So that is something that can be helpful, but really any of the VR services that someone needs, we can offer. And just because it's self-employment doesn't lock out any of those other services. So we really encourage individuals pursuing self-employment to take advantage of all the services VR has to offer that can help them. We've even hired people to do tutoring on a payroll program, for example, so that they would be able to handle payroll when they got to that point. So there's just like VR, it is so individualized, and we can really create wonderful services to support. So I'm going to go on. My favorite part is to talk about success stories, because we've talked about all the, how we do it, how we get there, but there have been some really cool success stories. This gentleman, Paul, has CP and has had trouble with physically demanding jobs in the past. He had skills of woodworking, asked for help. He's called Knock on Wood. But he does furniture and specific types, and he primarily goes around Florida at festivals and big events, not like just little flea markets, but bigger events he gets invited to. And he does those events, but then he also takes a lot of special orders. So that's another enhancement to his plan. And I believe he's even opened it up now to some internet availability for people to look at his woodwork and work out some shipping arrangements. So he's gone from just when he started out testing the feasibility to being at little kind of flea market activities. And now he's at some major festivals and is doing very well. We're proud of Paul. So I'm going to tell you about another one. Sherry is kind of amazing. I mean, all these successful entrepreneurs are, but she's the owner of an organizing and productivity consulting coaching company called Just Fix This Mess. And if she lived in my area, I would be signing her up. She knew that working a full-time job for her, kind of a 9-to-5 full-time job, was not an option due to her physical and some mental disabilities. So she thought being an entrepreneur would be great. And after VR helped her get her business up and open, and I just love this Fix This Mess title she has, she became a vendor for VR because counselors were saying they had customers that could benefit from that service. So she was thrilled about that, and she really feels a debt of gratitude to VR. She said it gave her her future and her life back, and nothing makes her happier than helping other people. So Sherry's a real success story that we enjoy sharing. So I'm going to give it to you, Peter.
All right. Well, so we're going to talk about Steve Horn, and Steve proudly owns his own lawn and pressure washing service called Ascension. His goal is to gain enough clients to hire a crew and focus more of his time to meet and securing new customers. Steve says VR gave him confidence in himself, and he knew if he could depend on himself, he would get things going down the right path. So, definitely these are, just a sample of variety of some of these really great self-employment cases that we've had here at Florida VR. And we hope to have many, many more in the future. Jan, are there any other cases you'd like to share before we move on?
I would like to mention a few of supported self-employment cases because some people really struggle envisioning people with more significant disabilities, sometimes intellectual, developmental, sometimes mental health, often a lot of times physical disabilities, or some complexity of all those combined. So some cases that we've worked with is there's a young lady who loved candles. She has intellectual developmental disability, had tried work at work, wasn't working out for her. So she was just sitting home, and her parents were really worried about her once she got out of school sitting home. So they really came to VR to see what we could do to help. And they mentioned her love of candles and how she had learned how to make them. And so she went down a supported self-employment case. She could do many of the steps involved in her business. She picked the colors of the candles. She picked the scents to match. She made some amazing combinations. She could pour the wax into the glass jars that she used and some other receptacles for the candle wax. She was able to trim it. She could pack it and wrap it. So she could do all of those steps. She could not drive, so she could not, as she expanded and got orders from local stores, she could not drive to do the deliveries. So, I mean, her plan had all that factored in. And she could not do the bookkeeping part. She could tell you how many candles she sold and what size of the candles, but she really needed help with that. Luckily, her dad had retired and he was able to do a pretty simple program, and she would give him the information that he needed, and he would be able to help her have, track her finances and make sure she was paying taxes and that she was making money, not just a hobby. And it had expanded enough that she was able to pay for all of those services and supports that she needed. on the long-term basis. And then I believe, if memory serves right, the Agency for Persons with Disabilities stepped in to provide her extended services. So, great success. Somebody that if you'd asked people, would she be a business owner, they might not have envisioned that. So part of VR is trying to get our counselors and everyone else to broaden their vision about who could be a business. So another case that comes to mind is a young man with pretty significant CP and mobility issues, but very bright. Tried some employment options, and he found that very difficult because long wait for a bus, had to be up very early to for someone to help him get ready. Long bus ride, would get to work, then have to reverse that process, long bus drive home. We know transportation is often a barrier. He just didn't feel that was for him. And he had a father and mother who were very involved, strong advocates, and they helped him research different options. And he knew a couple people that owned their own business. So they did some research and they came to VR, and the counselor recognized this could be something that would work and connected him to a CBTAC of his choice. And he put vending machines all out around town. And his dad happened to be in the chamber, and his mother was in a food professional group. And I mean, they had contacts, and we bought him his first 5, I think, to see if it was going to work, the machines and the supply. And then we increased it when we saw that, it could happen. So he hired his bookkeeper to help him with the financial end. I mean, but he would go and he could put things in the vending machine, could collect the money, could count the money, prepare bank deposits, but he could not work the program to do his own bookkeeping. And that's really important that all is done well. So he did hire a bookkeeper for, like 5 hours a month to help with the financial aspects. And neither of these individuals, if you just met him and you thought, oh, business owner, I don't see how. But with committed people around them and with VR support and services, it really worked for them. And they're just a couple of the stories that come to mind. There's more. Now, in Florida, supported self-employment cases are less frequently than regular self-employment cases. But overall, I think all of our self-employment related cases are going to be increasing, because during COVID, people found out they could work from home and they could develop their own businesses. So I think we're seeing more of an increase in people being aware of that through commercials, and you can just tell it's growing. And so we're excited that VR is in the position to help people do that. So I'm going to turn it back over.
Thank you, Jan. Great success stories. So before we wrap up, there are a few resources I want to share with you. I'd like to mention some more information about the CBTAC training. If you'd like to find out about that, you can visit the Griffin and Hammis website, so griffinandhammis.com. There's also the national site on self-employment for the local Small Business Development Center. That's the America's ssbdc.org. Just as a reminder, you can always access additional resources and this webinar at the Center for Self-Employment.org. I just also want to thank Ashley with GHA and Terry with VCU for inviting us to share about self-employment here at Florida VR. I want to give a special extra special shout out and thanks to Jan for assisting with this presentation and sharing all of her knowledge on self-employment. And last but not least, want to thank viewers like you who want to learn more about assisting individuals with disabilities to pursue self-employment. Jan?
I just want to echo Peter's thanks to everybody that made the webinar possible. We get a lot of calls and emails from other states and other agencies asking us about our self-employment program. So we're always very happy to share that information because we really believe it's a wonderful opportunity for people to become entrepreneurs and have that self-direction in their life. So we believe in the service, and we are willing at any time to share information with anybody that would like more details about our specific program. And we're still learning and growing. You know, we keep evaluating and looking to see what we can do to make it easier for our customers and how we can best help them. So it's a never-ending journey. You saw we started way back before 2005, and we're still going. So again, thank you all very much for being with us today. Is there